doing that? You'll get me back. Super. I love when a plan comes together. All right. So another project, kind of a different approach I wanted to share with you is with Sacred Valley in Peru. So Sacred Valley is where the famed Machu Picchu is. It's really a beautiful area that has quite a lot of tourists, as you can imagine, but their healthcare in Peru is struggling. And one of the things, this gentleman, Don Morrison, is actually a friend of mine. We met at Microsoft and worked on some other projects together that I'll get to in a minute. But he worked with some Microsoft funding and a Microsoft partner to bring essentially electronic medical records to Sacred Valley, because what would happen is you can imagine mountain of paper, nobody knows where anything is, and so now, and that's one of the pictures of like the providers and the nurses with all of their iPad like devices with all the information that they need to serve their populace. And it was really a revolutionary kind of step for them. And again, that ability to kind of leapfrog. They didn't have to go through, well, should we do Epic or Allscripts? No, it didn't like that. It didn't go like that. It's like, here, this is a tool, use it. Yes, it's wonderful. There you go. So it's just really interesting how you can take something that seems really kind of straightforward and really make a difference in this case. So the other thing I wanted to share with you is, we often think in terms of to make a difference, we have to be part of these large monolithic organizations. You guys have this very nimble group. You are actively out in your communities doing things. Some of the research that you were sharing was really incredible. And one of the things that I like to remind myself, as well as some of the folks that I talk with outside of this room, is that you don't have to be part of a huge organization to affect change. And a couple of things I wanted to share. So I'm part of a nonprofit. There's like 7 of us in this nonprofit that are active. And we support an orphanage in Moquegua, Peru, White River, South Africa, and a community in Matu, Kenya. And we've been working in Peru for I've been working in Peru for about 5 years, and we've done 2 things that I'm really proud of. One is that we've set up a digital literacy program in the orphanage so those kids can learn computer skills. The second thing is we have at that orphanage 3 special needs, and 2 of them are adults because they have nowhere else to go. There's nowhere for these people to go. And we have worked really, really hard to provide them with one-on-one medical support. So these nurses or CNA types of folks come in and spend the days with them, and they're much more active, they're much more engaged with the rest of the community. This one picture is Kathleen, and it took us 8 hours with an appointment to go to the local hospital to get her measured for a wheelchair. If we hadn't been there, she still wouldn't be having a new wheelchair. So I know you folks know this lesson really well, but these trips and this work that Dawn and I are doing are the types of things that we work with a larger community, but Microsoft supports us. When I go and do these volunteer trips, they're actually paying me a stipend to be there if I take my time off. So my goal here is to show kind of the big picture. There's lots of things that are lots of things that we're doing on a big scale, like Airband, but there are also these little pockets within the organization that are doing little pet projects that also make a difference. So I wanted to share that with you. I am not going to be able to stay to the end or the reception, I'm sorry to say. But Cynthia has my business cards. I'm going to be here for a few more minutes. I have lots of great stories about digital health and some of the other solutions that we're bringing to providers and med device companies. So if you have any interest, I encourage you, there's my email address on the last slide. Contact me. I'm happy to share, and I appreciate your time and attention.
Thomas. I work close to Redmond. I'm there twice a week. I live in Seattle, and I work for KP. And so I guess my question is about the impact on costs for technology when I notice a lot of innovators may not have the policy background to know when there's a need that has high costs and when that is distinct from something that might look like it's a very innovative solution but actually drive up costs. So just to give an example, it's not a critique, but like the baby monitor. Yes. So I'm an internist, so I take care of adults, and even for most adults who come into the hospital in Tacoma, yes. We don't really need monitors. We need them for certain people. Right. So for babies to all be monitored, it doesn't have a very high unit cost because the innovation was to lower that, but it has a very high cost because of the frequency of use. So I'm thinking from a policy standpoint, where do we use the brains that you have so that the initiatives are actually lowering costs overall?
Yeah, so thank you for that. And it is an interesting point that you bring up. The idea on the baby monitor specifically is that if you know early that there's a problem, you can apply interventions before the problem gets worse. So in that distinct example, that's where you would think cost savings would come into play. I'll give you another example. We have another partner called PureBridge Health. They have developed a wireless cardiac monitor for people who have had a cardiac event. The idea there is they wear it home for 7 days and they're monitored. And that is an opportunity to avoid readmissions. And so when we look at how we want to do digital health, we do want to drive down costs. We want to identify, using the models, where we are likely to see readmissions, where we're likely to see someone get worse. So a couple more examples if I have time. So we've got another organization that we're working with that does dialysis treatments in their clinics. And so we're working on a project where we're monitoring the health of the actual dialysis machine to make sure that it's working at peak efficiency and peak efficacy. But we're also monitoring the patients while they're getting the treatments so that if their vitals start to tank, we can do something immediately. That's way better than waiting until they have to go to the emergency room, for example. And then So it revolves, the cost savings revolves around readmissions, predicting something's likely to happen before it happens so that the cheaper, quicker interventions can be applied. Does that answer your question? Okay, great, thank you.